Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Belkins Season 3 Under the Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Hicks, and today is an exciting day. I have with us the CEO of Journey DXP. Journey's mission is to enable B2B companies to leverage digital experiences and transform how they sell and manage accounts. They make it easier to sell, buy, and more reliably predict your revenue growth. Welcome, Bill Butler, to the stage. Hey, Bill, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Nice to be here.
So listen, in layman's terms, first off, for anyone that may be listening, tell me how you and the team at Journey DXP, how you guys are digitizing the sales experience. I agree with you. First off, I think that digitizing the sales experience is where everybody's going. All things being equal, most people would probably want to transact digitally, but how exactly are you guys doing that?
Yeah, probably the simplest way to describe it, Brian, is this concept of virtual selling, which really started getting promoted a lot during the pandemic and people going remote. And when people think about virtual selling, there's really two parts to it. One is the synchronous side of it, which is what you and I are doing right now. This is live dialogue and communication through Zoom or like tool. The other side of it is the asynchronous side of it. So when I'm not live, what can my customer do digitally? What can I do digitally to engage, to educate, and drive forward customer activity? We're the asynchronous side to this.
Interesting. So when I get those emails in my inbox and it's somebody that's holding up a whiteboard that says Brian Hicks, and I push play and it's like, hey, Brian, just wanted to drop you a line to let you know I've been thinking about our conversation last week. Is that what we're talking about?
Not really. Yeah, there's tools out there. Those are really just the video tools that allow you to kind of capture a video in moment and try to send out a personal video. We design ours, and our product is called a smart room, just to give you a little background on the product name. The market, and this is the name that Gartner has kind of subscribed to it, is what they call a digital sales room, or DSR. I guess it was last summer of 2021, Gartner put it on the map, and they said, there's a new category here that we're calling digital sales rooms. And obviously a lot of this was indicative of what was going on in the world with the pandemic and people moving remote and working, things like that. We just needed a better way to engage people. So when you think about what a digital sales room is, probably the best analogy is what's gone on in the B2C market, right? So go back a decade or two and everything we bought was through brick and mortar retail. And then over time, what we found is that most people prefer now to buy online. And I know we're even trying to kick the Amazon Prime habit in our family. We buy so many things through Amazon. We're trying to be smarter about it and be fair about it and try to buy more things locally. But the whole idea is creating these digital experiences, which are really designed for the consumer, the customer, the buyer. We're designing and building for our clients personalized digital experiences. They look like websites at some level, but they're private and personalized for the organization. So if I'm selling to company XYZ, I've got a private room for XYZ. I can share content in there. I can collaborate with them. I can drive a sales process. I see analytics. Once I decide to go with company 123, I have a different room for them. I have a different room. They're buying differently. They're buying a different type of product. There's different people involved. So we have these private experiences really designed to help bring together the selling team and the buying team.
Interesting. How did you guys think of this concept of a digital sales room? It sounds like from what you explained that you almost, maybe it wasn't just you guys, and we can talk about that, in a little bit, but it's almost like you paved the way for a new category or a new space that hadn't been before. What was it that prompted this idea?
Yeah, it actually went back quite a bit. And, I pride myself of growing up as a bag carrying sales guy, first line sales manager, VP of sales. I built and grew global teams, and I know you're familiar with that too. And I love being part of the B2B sales world. It's kind of who I am professionally. I think the one thing I did differently along the way as I was doing that for companies is I always saw other people doing maybe something a little bit better than us, or maybe something different and I needed to learn. So I continue to spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of money on dinners, lunches and breakfast behind people to learn a little bit about what they're doing, a better way to go to market, a better way to develop demand, a better way to manage clients, whatever it was. I started accumulating this knowledge really just for myself. And I started breaking it down to things like people, process, and technology. How do you hire and retain and ramp people the best? And what's the best sales process out there? And then ultimately technology too, because in many ways, sales was devoid of technology. Outside of CRM, there wasn't a lot there for the sales rep. I worked on this stuff. I kind of had my own little following of people. I never wrote a book. I never became a consultant per se on this. I just really did it for myself and people in my network. And I used to get phone calls from venture capitalists and investors and CEOs of companies saying, I've got a sales issue here. And I know you do that thing. Can you come in and talk to my team a little bit about what you've learned along the way? I said, sure, happy to do that. And I got invited one time this is kind of the breakthrough moment, right? So the breakthrough moment for me was I got invited to a meeting at Kleiner Perkins, which is the premier Silicon Valley venture firm, right? I think they invested in Google, Amazon, Uber, Spotify, you name it. And they sat in the meeting and the managing general partner mentioned something. He said, we have companies in our portfolio that we've invested in, B2B companies that have just okay products, but they really cracked the code on how to market and sell. And they're doing very well. Conversely, we have companies that have really good products, but they don't know how to market and sell properly, and they're just doing okay. So he said the common denominator here isn't investing in a good product or a great product. It's building out a go-to-market model that we can have consistent and successful every time through. So it kind of led to a broader discussion of B2B sales, and is B2B sales dead? Is it dying? Is it transforming? What's going on? And the conclusion of all this was sales continues to be part art and part science. And this conversation goes back at least 12 years ago, if not longer. And the conclusion was it's too much art and not enough science. So how do you put science into B2B sales? And not to replace the art, but to make the art better. We're not taking sales reps out. We actually want to make the sales rep better. And in many ways, building solutions and technology that can lift up the sales rep and the entire customer experience. And interesting enough is that moment, I knew that things were changing. I knew there were some really bright minds behind it too, but I never expected to start it myself. So I said, all right, let me go out there and see what's going on. I expected one or two things to happen. This was probably 2004, 2005, 2006. Marketo and Eloqua, HubSpot, tools like that were coming into the market. I said, I can see the marketing guys moving right into the space. So I'm gonna build some relationships up with them because I'm gonna kind of capitalize on what they do because I think they're coming in from marketing right into sales. Or maybe the CRM companies are coming upwards. So this is an opportunity for CRM, which is mostly inwardly looking, to go external. So maybe they start extending themselves externally and build digital. So I expected those markets to do it. Years went by, none of them did it. I had my network of people that I worked with, and I was actually getting, to some extent, nudged by people to say, just go out and do it. It's good for you, it's good for the market, and people need it. So that was really the emergence of Journey DXP.
That's so interesting. Why do you think nobody launched anything similar? Why do you think that so much time had gone by and nobody latched on to the idea? Do you think, was it just they didn't see the need to be great enough? What do you think it was?
I think there's a couple things. One is a lot of what was coming on there in sales and marketing was somewhat of repaving things that already been out there. And again, I'll say good things about Salesforce because one, we run native on Salesforce, our product. We're a great partner to Salesforce. But in many ways, Salesforce just basically put in the cloud what was been done a decade or two before with other products like Siebel. So it wasn't very innovative. There wasn't a lot behind it. And the marketing automation side, I thought more innovative, the way they approached inbound and outbound marketing. So I figured the marketing teams would do it, but I think they became so successful with what they had so quickly. And then these companies got sold, bought, and then the innovation that they probably got founded upon really stagnated. And part of it just came to success. New management comes in, they're trying to manage profitability, they're working on an exit plan. So it seemed like the innovation in the industry broadly had just kind of stopped at that point in time. That's where, again, myself as a sales leader first and an innovator second, saw an opportunity in the market to bring some real innovation into sales and marketing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I definitely have had a theme of folks that I've worked with. I would say some of the best, but also some of my favorite leaders that I've had have always had this mindset of never stop innovating. They might not spend 85% of their day trying to think of something new, but you can bet that they're spending some part, 10%, 15%, trying to solve a problem or trying to think of something new. And then you just have a couple conversations around it and see if it grows legs, see if people are like, right. Yeah, or not. So let me ask you this, and this is more, I think, from a personal side. So I see a lot of, and it's just in my business, in my conversations, a lot of the founders and the entrepreneurs that I'm talking with they have a technical background. And I know that you have primarily a sales background. You are focused. Your focus has always been on the people aspect of selling and growing revenue and growing client acquisition. What did you experience when it came to actually getting the pieces in place and launching this new business from the technical piece of it? Did you have a process of looping in contracting technical talent? Did you reach out to partners to see who could help you from the technical side of things make this vision and dream that you have be a reality?
Yeah, a little bit all of the above. And I had known some people that had, and again, I'd spent a lot of time working out of Silicon Valley, out of Boston. So some of the best tech hubs in the world. And again, I did a lot of work with early and mid-stage companies. So I knew a lot of venture capitalists and PE companies. So I was able to easily get connected to companies and organizations that were either interested in this or had access to talent to build some of this. One of the interesting things that came along the way on this, Brian, was when we kind of built a prototype on this. So part of it is you got to kind of see it and feel it a little bit and begin get off the PowerPoints and build some. So we built a prototype and we took it out to friends and family, and we're getting some feedback and research on this. And we started asking sales reps in particular. And I just remember we did a very simple dog and pony survey with them, probably met with, hundreds of sales reps to ask them to some extent the same question. And of the tools you have today, describe them. How many of these tools actually help you sell? They help you make your number on a scale of 1 to 10, just name it. So they would name off, and CRM was always there. And for the most part, most of the tools they had, because they were pretty much inwardly focused, were 2s and 3s. So they said, it helped me track things, but it really doesn't help me sell. So the aha moment was, we said, what about something like this? We showed them what a smart room would look like, a digital sales room would look like. And they were throwing out 8, 9s, and 10s because they got it right away. They said, this makes me better at selling because it makes it easier for the customers to buy. It gives me a place to really connect and collaborate with them. So that was a real moment for us where we thought we were onto something. The other one was, which was kind of interesting, is we built this first in Amazon, and we went to Salesforce to build a partnership. Obviously, they were and still are the most dominant CRM in the market. And they came back to us and they said, you know what? You found something in our core market, which is sales, B2B sales, white space, which we don't understand. We're not tracking it. We're not following it. Would you guys, but we believe in it. We believe what you're telling us. We think the market's going there. Would you build natively on our platform, and we'll make a really interesting partnership with you technically? So they gave us access to technical capabilities of the system they don't do with most companies, because they wanted this built natively on their platform. So that was another aha moment for us that said, we're really onto something here.
Yeah, absolutely. When the prettiest girl in the dance wants to have this dance with you, it's
exactly. It didn't happen in high school, so I'm glad it's happening now, right?
Rachel, I hope if you ever see this, we should have danced. This is your
go.
fault.
Exactly. No last names.
Hey, yeah, no last names. How long did that process last? Help me understand from conception, where you're like, you know what, I'm gonna dip my toes in the water, because I'm guessing you didn't go full steam ahead initially. I'm guessing you probably like put some of your thoughts together, had some conversations, and then eased in slightly. Then you got to the place where you did enough R&D where you're like, yeah, this is going to be my baby. I'm going to put all hands on deck, every resource that I've got to make this something. What was that process in terms of length? And was it that Salesforce meeting that got you to the place, or did it happen before where you're like, this is going to be all in for me, I'm going to make this mine?
I was still under the idea at that point in time, before we started building the prototype, that someone else would do this. So I was continuing to knock on doors and look under doormats and look for things. There's got to be something else out there. I can't be the only one thinking about this. As I continue to network out there, but I continue to hear stories from people about struggles they had in selling and continuing to kind of push me in that direction. There's another interesting story. There was a gentleman I had met. He was the president of about a $500 million services company, super bright guy. And you get connected to these people because somebody talked about a problem they had. And this was his story. So he goes, I just finished up our last fiscal year. And he goes, we missed our number for the year. And he goes, there was 10 deals that he goes, I know we should have won. We were the best fit in the market. We had the best solution. The company wanted to do something. And for whatever reason, those 10 deals did not close. If we would have closed those 10 deals, even 8 of them, we would have had a great year. So he goes, I decided to dive in deep and say, what happened with these 10 deals? We should have won every one. And he said, my conclusion was, he goes, every one of those sales cycles was managed differently. and somewhat ad hoc and very informal, in many ways designed by the preferences of the sales rep. So the methodologies we had, the messaging we gave them, the training we provided them went out the window. We had no way to guide and direct the process. And he goes, if we did, he goes, we would have won all that. So he was hell-bent on seeing some type of innovation like ours being brought in. So his was one of those moments in time where I knew he wasn't the only one. A lot of companies were facing the same type of thing. And then the inflection moment, obviously, was Salesforce.
What was that time frame like?
I'll tell you, I spent 2 years doing research and prototyping and talking to people, because I think I was somewhat reluctant to even doing it. I expected people to come up. I was actually working with another company at the time, and I told them this was my side project, and they said, that's okay, help us do this. And I was initially going to do it part-time work, and but they said, no, come over full-time. So I didn't spend as much time on it for a period of time. I was helping a company transform themselves. It was a combination. They brought 3 companies together, and they wanted to form a new market. And so I was the number 2 guy in the company there, but I still spent time doing the research and meeting companies and talking about it. So it got kind of elongated a little bit because I was gamefully employed at some level.
Got it. Yeah, that's what I was curious about. And I was just thinking, like, for anybody listening that might kind of be in a similar situation, so hypothetically, let's say that you took a more traditional path, or that you were in a position where you were able to put more resources towards it. Do you think you could have shortened that from 2 years to 1 year, like the go-to-market from initial conception, or what do you think would have been realistic?
Part of it too, Brian, was timing. One of the things that I was kind of trying to gauge at that point in time, is this the right time to do it? Like you mentioned earlier, did you guys kind of create the market? Well, we kind of did, so doing that, there's good and bad with that, by the way. A lot of times there's history of companies that created a market and someone came in and they capitalized the market later on. So I didn't want to be that company. So I was a little bit cautious about coming into it. One of the things I learned many years ago too, on when you really look at things and try to say, are companies going to spend money on this? We get excited about our solutions. We get excited about things like that. So we got to temper that a little bit. But one of the things, and I learned this actually from this guy, Jeffrey Moore. You may be familiar with his books, Crossing the Chasm, and that whole methodology. So he was on the board of a company that I was part of, and he would ask the question. He said, very simply, he goes, is our solution a line item on the company's budgets that we're selling to? And he said, better than that, is our name on the line items, not only the category, but is the name of our company. That's the best. If your name is there, you're golden. You're going to get that business. But is the category there? And to some extent, you guys are that category, I think, in Belkins. There's a lot of companies that put money out for demand generation programs, getting first meetings, and an unlimited amount of money and cash out there for you guys to tap into. You got to convince them, though, that you're the best ones to do it, like you convinced me to do it. And we've been very happy, by the way. So it's worked out really well.
Good.
But we weren't that way. So we were saying there's not a category for us. We're not a budget. But we don't, there's budget out there. There's discretionary money, but you got to fight for it. There's other companies looking to do things. So you get in that big pile and you're trying to carve something out. And that's just hard. That's hard work. It takes a lot of time. So that was part of my hesitancy, because I wasn't sure the market was ready at that point in time.
Those conversations I always find interesting. There's a different type of conversation that has to be had with someone that we're talking about a need to have solution versus a nice to have solution. If it's something that we're talking about money that's up for grabs, if it's marketing funds that is just left over and they're going to put it somewhere, and so they're trying to decide where to put it, and you need to compel them to give it to you, or if it's already allocated for what it is that you do, you don't have to convince them to spend it on this category. You just have to convince them to spend it with you, that you guys can solve the problem because they're already allocating it. So walk me through that a little bit, Bill, in terms of, all right, so we're at a good place right now. I think that you've done a great job of taking us through the journey of conception and to getting to a place where you're like the light bulb, you have the aha moment where this is something that people need. Talk to me about acquiring your first customers. Actually, before that, let's back up 1 second. So when it came to the help, we talked about that a little bit. You said that you looped in some folks to help you develop the product, do some proof of concept. You had some good conversations. At this point, had you taken any outside investment, or had you bootstrapped everything yourself up until this point?
Yeah, I bootstrapped it myself for the beginning.
Wow.
But I also knew, so the 2 points you just made are actually all coming into one, because it all comes back to the same thing. So remember, I was kind of nudged along the way by venture capitalists and people that own companies to do something here. They just thought they wanted to reinvent sales. They saw their portfolio struggling. They wanted something new here. And I had worked with some of these companies, and frankly, they made a lot of money through companies I was part of. So they were willing to make another investment in me. So it was one of those things where they wanted to invest in the company. At the same time, I wanted access to their portfolio companies. So kind of struck a deal and said, look, if you invest, you then also have to open up your portfolio companies to me to be our first set of customers that we begin to work with.
Wow.
And that process actually worked really well for us. And I was really pleased because it made it somewhat frictionless. Now, again, not everybody wanted to do it. You get some companies that are like, why is this thing being thrust on me by my investor and things? So we did get some of that resistance, and that was evident. But I think for the most part, when we talked to people and we had very open and honest conversations, that look, we're trying to do something here for you that hopefully can transform the way you guys sell, can improve your growth rates, your predictability for revenue, your forecast all those things. And they're like, all right, it's worth putting the time and effort and money into it. And that's really how we built our first group of clients.
Interesting, man. That's yeah, I love how that all tied together. It's super, super smart of you to negotiate that into the initial relationships where it's like, hey, look, if you see value in this enough to invest in it, then you got to help us get our first customers. Because I talk to a lot of people. I've had conversations on the record and off the record, and I've heard some crazy stories of what founders will do to get their first customer. Whether that's giving their service for free, whether that's deploying the software for free for a certain period of time. And then if it does what it's supposed to, there's one story that I even have, and I'll leave the names out because it was just told to me, it was told to me one-to-one, but one of the negotiating points was that, so they were young, they were in college, they were trying to get their first deal. And they went to the building that they were going to try to make the pitch and do the sale. And the kid wanted to impress the people that he was pitching. And so he took his dad's Jaguar to the sale. So he parks the Jaguar in the parking lot and he goes up there and they do the pitch, and literally they're giving them, they're not making any money on this deal. They're just closing a really big name. And as a condition, if it goes well, they're going to be able to use that name as a use case and a reference point. And the guy looks at him and he goes, all right, look, you've done a great job. You guys know your stuff. Obviously, we're in, if you let me take your nice Jaguar out there for a 30-minute spin. And he's, can you give me 1 minute to make a phone call? And he comes out in the hallway and calls his dad. And he goes, Dad, I can't believe I'm doing this, but this is the deal. And he's like, yeah, of course. Have him take it for a spin. My boy's closing his first deal. Of course, go do it.
No, that's great. That's super.
Isn't that funny?
I love that. I love that.
So when you're having, so that makes sense. And I loved hearing the different unique path that everybody takes to getting their first customers and kind of getting the first ones on board. But talk to me about how those conversations went when up until that point, you probably didn't have any quantifiable data around the impact that this virtual or this digital sales room would have on the organization. All you had was the feedback from sales teams on, and then the promise or the kind of the vision of the goal of what it will do for their sales teams. And I would guess that the specific person that you're selling to either A, had to have kind of a visionary mindset. They had to be that early adopter mindset, that thought leader mindset, or B, you had to be able to put in front of them some type of numbers or some type of measurable impacts that they could expect after deploying the sales room. So what did that process look like? What did that discussion look like?
It's interesting. Over time, we've accumulated a lot of data on compressing sales cycles and growth rates and things like that. But early on, there wasn't a lot of that. We focused really on organizations that have a key account model. They're selling to organizations, multiple products, they're growing and developing them. It's not a transactional sale. So a lot of those are longer sales cycles too. They take time, they take effort. So when we started working with them, and this was somewhat evolutionary for us, it was interesting because we didn't know how they would react to some of this. We were betting that we were going to win over the sales rep, and the sales rep would say, yeah, I want to use this, and that would kind of carry the day. In reality, what will end up happening is the customer started reacting very favorably to this, and this worked its way back into the organization. So the customers are like, this is cool, this is innovative. I'll tell you a couple stories on that. One of the early clients, we were using it with some of the sales reps, but not others. One of the sales reps lost the deal. It was an existing client, one of the biggest ones in the territory, and they just went a different direction. So one of the other sales reps said, hey, look, you have nothing to lose. Put a smart room in front of the client. Just show them that we're different, we're more innovative, and see what happens. So he did that. He put a smart room out there. The client comes back and says, you know what? You didn't make the short list, but you did now. And as they go forward there, they landed up retaining the business and expanding the business by that. And the client even said, we didn't think you guys were very innovative. We didn't see a lot of thought leadership from you guys. But the fact that you brought that in front of us changed the whole mindset of the way we think of you guys. So those are the moments that begin to get people thinking differently. We had another client, and this was a relatively, again, new client. This happened in the UK. So they had a territory in the UK, the banking territory. Supposedly it was a very rich territory, but they were having trouble keeping reps in that territory. So it turned over. They finally got a new rep in there. He's like, all right, where do I start? One of the biggest banks over there, Lloyd's of London, actually, they had been doing an evaluation, and this company didn't, again, make the short list. They weren't even showing up because they were transitioning reps so often. They had no presence there. So the new rep says, you know what? I know what you guys are doing. It was a broad decision across many different groups in Lloyd, so they had to get a lot of people together. So he created a smart room, put it out there. He said within 2 weeks, there was over 50 customers in this one room looking at information, content, collaborating back and forth. He goes, I clearly found something there. Roll it forward is they end up winning the business. It was the largest deal that company did in the entire year. And they did it in 50% of the time that it normally would have taken to close a deal that size.
Wow.
So the customers, the ones that are, when you see customers coming in, when organizations realize that customers are reacting favorably to this, that changes the whole mindset of the way people think of this new and more innovative technology.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely agree with that in the sense that the numbers speak for themselves, right? If you have increased your sales number, if you decrease your sales cycle, that's one thing. But when you have them speaking up and saying, look, I didn't think you guys were this company, but this one thing showed me that you are, that word travels fast.
Yep.
It travels fast when you're getting, I mean, it's simple. It might sound really simple to people, but I'm telling you, in the sales office, whether you're in a physical office or whether you're in a virtual office, when you're getting those high fives and that rep comes back out and goes, well, I've got to shout out so-and-so rep who let me use their digital sales room to land this client, because when that starts happening, that word really travels like wildfire and people really catch on to it. And it kind of it creates a buzz. It creates a buzz, if you will.
That's the energy they want to see. That's a validation more than, the stories of compressing sales cycles and time, and we save you 20%. That's great. But when they hear these stories, we had another one. Again, this was that early group of clients that helped to give us some confirmation in here. This organization was selling to Citigroup, and they won a deal using us. Now, when we came to market, we focused only on sales. We said, this is a deal room for you. This is going to make the selling process easier. That's all we did. Make it a deal room, make it work. And it worked for them. And they were selling to Citigroup. It was the largest client they actually ever able to sell. So right after they completed the sale, Citigroup came to them and said, hey, that thing you had us in, can you use that to onboard us? Because we like the experience in the selling side. We think it's the type of tool that'll help onboard us quickly too and effectively. So they came back to us and said, we're not using it for selling. Can we use it for the after sale onboarding process? We're like, sure, why not? So off it went. It brought more people in, grew our business there. So then we started doing more in not just onboarding, but more systemic account management. I want to be able to manage clients. I want to not just show them what we're doing in the existing projects, but show them some ideas for new projects, cross-sell and things like that. So we started doing more after the sale also with smart rooms. And then eventually going forward and doing more marketing rooms, doing more to help organizations just do marketing within a smart room configuration.
That's awesome. The focus to sales, and I think I agree with you again on that, focusing on sales initially, because that's where I think you're going to drive a lot of valuable conversations. Everybody wants to talk about how you can help me put more money in my pocket, but then being able to iterate as you pull those layers back and see other needs start to emerge where you can also solve, if it will be more effective than what they could currently be doing. That's what I was trying to think about. If what they're currently doing is effective enough for them, then great. That's awesome. But if there can be a better way, then okay, let's talk about it. If there's a better way, if there's a more effective way, if there's a less expensive way, if there's a faster way, then let's talk about it and discuss it and see if it makes sense.
Well, most companies do, Brian, and I'm sure you've seen this too, is there's a high degree of frustration right now with sales, both at the individual level, the reps themselves. Gartner just came out with a study that said that 89% of the reps are anxious and 54% of them are looking for new jobs at any point in time. So there's just a lot of anxiety and concerns and just feeling of just not succeeding in sales right now. So people are looking to do things. They're looking for what's next, trying to understand what's next. And that's hopefully where we come in.
Yeah, no, I like that. You're right. There's definitely some, and I'm trying to see, I don't know what I attribute it to. Do I attribute it to the economic climate, as far as the upcoming recession that we're all getting ready to face, or what? But I think I see that as well. Colleagues are getting restless. There seems to be a little bit of unrest with sales folks. it causes a need for more communicative leadership sometimes in some organizations. We're easing those fears and those tensions and making sure. I have a client of mine, or a couple of good buddies I'm talking to from Australia. They have a company called Scodel, and it's about a mental health check-in application that they've been leveraging for universities, but they're starting to talk about doing it for workplaces. And I'm thinking, and I'm like, man, as times like these continue, it's all cyclical. There's always ups and there's downs, and it all comes back around. But as more light gets shed on the mental health of your people, I think that being aware and having those discussions is more important. But no, you're so right. It's interesting. And I wonder if there's a disparity between, because one thing that I think about is that you have old school style sales organizations where you have the reps that do their own prospecting, and then they take that prospect, once they qualify them to an appointment, then they take them through their sales journey, and then they close that sale, and then they come back to their pipeline, and it's not as healthy as it should be because they've been focused on the sales journey, but now they have to prospect, which is part of what the reason that Belkins has our lane. And then you have the ones that are separating them, where whether they do it outsourced or whether they don't, whether they have an SDR who sets appointments and they have an SE who does the closing. I wonder if there's a correlation between some of those frustrated salespeople that aligns them to the ones that have to, because I think they're not the same person. Those two people, they're not the same personality. And so I could see if I was in a role now where I had to do my own prospecting, I would definitely be more frustrated. But right now I'm not. Belkins is treating us pretty great, and we have a pretty great model. But
it is true though. Salespeople can't do everything. I can't prospect, I can't sell, and I can't account manage. But in some cases, they're required to do that. You're putting too much on their shoulders. I think specialization really is key here. And I think the best organizations are really learning to do that. I think the other thing too is sales reps in effect have been trained on delivering their message on their sales process continuously. But what the organization hasn't focused on is the buying experience. As hard as to sell, it's actually harder to buy today. Customers deal with information overloads, constant amount of information. And the number of people that get involved in decisions right now usually average between 12 and 24 people that get involved in any kind of B2B decision. And it just takes one of them to say, not even no, but not now, or I need more information, or I read something over here that was different from what you're telling me, and what do I do? And things just stop and stall. That's because the buyer is confused. They can't get consensus with their team. In effect, the sales rep might have done everything in their process correctly, but it's just, they're not making it easier for the customer to buy. And that's the missing piece. That's the part that we have to get right to, in effect, improve the selling process. The second part of it is the specialization, as you were talking about. I think that is absolutely critical. We see that across our client base. The organizations that have specialized this use a company like Belkins to help develop and set up the first meetings. In many ways, marketing then, we see it with our tool. Once they get initial activity through someone like Belkins, they need to still develop that. They still need to get that. So they'll use a room, and often run by marketing, to develop that opportunity further and further. So when the time the sales rep gets it, multiple people have been in there on the customer side. They've researched it, they understand it. It is a sales ready opportunity for sales to go close. And that's what they want. And that engine needs to work. Like you talked about, we used to talk about the on and off quarter. When I ran global sales teams, I could predict when a sales rep had a great quarter, that person would struggle the next quarter. And then they're on again, and then they're off again. It's for that same reason you mentioned. It's because they haven't spent the time developing their territory. The best organizations are continuing to drive this, and the tools and processes exist today. Just not everyone's doing it that way. And that's really I think, the key to making this work. It's a numbers game. I tell the story often as my first sales meeting, my first sales training many years ago, when I got into sales training, the trainer got up in the front of the room. He said, I'm going to tell you something. And this is, if you don't remember anything, remember this. The guy or gal who's the most successful is the one who's showing up more often than the competitors. So keep showing up, keep showing up. And that was true many years ago. It's also true today. I'm showing up physically. I'm also showing up digitally. And again, I'm getting more mind share. I'm being able to get the customer to understand my solution vis-a-vis the competition. If you're selling digitally and your competition isn't, they're waiting to get the next meeting per se set up. You'll have had so many customer touch points in between the time of your competition's meeting. You guys are just going to be a slam dunk win here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that. I think the more you can be, the more you can be in front of them, the greater, the better your opportunity is, right? And that's whether they're Googling solutions, that's whether they're searching testimonials for solutions on YouTube, whatever the specific case is, you need to be present in as many channels as you possibly can. And then that's pre-sales discussion and post-sales discussion, honestly. Like it positions you as a thought leader. I think I read a stat that said 80% of buyers do more research into their buying decision now than they ever have.
Sure.
Where they do it themselves. We want to feel like we're self-educated on a certain topic. And so we'll get taxed with the idea of shopping for a solution. And then we'll put our head to the laptop and we'll put our head down and we'll start figuring out who's the best. And we'll start doing a ton of Google. We'll get our Google doctorate on this topic by the time it's done. And when it comes to that, it makes it pretty comprehensive in terms of where do I need to be present, because there's a lot of different places. There's a lot of third-party sources, data sources. There's a lot of platforms out there that they can go and look at, where if you're present on all of them, that you'll create a theme in their mind where it's like, whoa, hang on, everywhere I've looked, Acme Solutions has been there. Every single place I've looked, they've been at they've been near the top of the list. And it does make for a more qualified opportunity, and it also kind of eases some of their initial hesitance when having that first discussion. I think that in general, by nature, your buyer might be a little more defensive with information. They might want to see what you've got. They might want to have you sell them on your solution. But really, the goal isn't to sell anything. It's to find out if there's an opportunity here based on what you need and based on what we provide. And if that's a good fit and if that's a good marriage, then great, then we can proceed. And you can have that conversation more transparently if there's an element of trust. And I think that element of trust is more established when they see you all these different places. You know what I mean?
And also, too, one of the things, Brian, in this we see a lot of is everybody buys differently, too. And like you talked about the whole idea of thought leadership and subject matter experts. And in many ways, we've always flipped the selling cycle a little bit. Like we put sales reps out at front. They're more the quarterback here. I should be able to quarterback the process. But early on, if a customer's not sure what they want to do, I'd prefer to get my thought leader out there. And thought leader doesn't have to be in my company. It could be a partner. It could be someone else. I can get them into the room. I can have them in there on video, and I can have them with a recorded YouTube presentation they gave at a big conference. But a respected thought leader will do more to move my sales cycle in my direction than a sales rep's going to do. But I'm there to orchestrate it. I want that to happen. And early on is when people start shaping their preferences. They may not make a decision yet, but they're starting to line up behind one lead vendor. That's when you want to hit them. And by the way, one thing we see across our rooms as we analyze it is everybody buys differently. Some people love consuming video content. They'll see presentations and things like that. Other people like reading research reports, analyst reports. Everyone has their own preference for how they want to learn and educate. And you just need to serve up the information so they can self-select the stuff that they need, and they'll do it themselves. And that's really the magic behind this. It's a self-education, a self-management, giving customers the autonomy to do it. But the beauty of this is I'm seeing activity occurring along the way. And by the way, the leading indicators, they invite their colleagues into the room. Hey, Bob, guess what? Look what I saw here. This guy just, boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden things start moving in your direction. And your competition is still waiting they're still waiting for a calendar invite for a meeting 3 weeks from now.
Yeah. Absolutely. I was just thinking when you said that, hitting them with a thought leader that maybe doesn't even work, maybe not even an employee of the company, definitely not, maybe not part of the sales. But when you said that, I was like, but when would you know that's the time to put them? It's almost like they're kind of telling you, they're giving you the indicators and telling you like, well, hey, here's where I'm at. And then, hey, let's send them this. Let's include this video from my colleague here who has done X, Y, and Z that relates or has a similar use case. And let's just send them this content that's valuable without asking for a sale or asking for a meeting. Let's just put it in front of them, because I'm a big believer in depository content. It's like making bank deposits instead of always taking withdrawals. And so, no, that's really good. That's awesome. I love that.
We had somebody do that recently. They actually took a presentation from the Davos conference with some world thought leader out there, and it matched up with their strategy. So they promoted that into the room and said, listen to what this person's saying here, and it reflects exactly what we're talking about. Well, the room kind of exploded. People saw that and they realized that this world-renowned thought leader is aligned with exactly the story behind this company.
Huh. Yeah, that's compelling. That's really compelling. What more confirmation do you need?
Exactly. And again, let thought leaders in your company, let thought leaders outside your company help tell your story. It's validation. It's better than the vendor only kind of content, which I think most companies somewhat resist today.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's no skin in the game for them. There's
Mhm.
no they don't have a don't get me wrong, I'm a passionate believer in what we do,
Mhm.
but also I recognize that if you hear me saying it, you're like, of course, he's VP of sales over there. Of course, he's going to think that they're the best in the business at this. Of course, he's going to think that they can do this seamlessly. But if I have Mr. Alex Smith from XYZ Solutions speak up and say, hey, actually, and maybe even doesn't say my name, doesn't say anything about Belkins specifically, but just talks about the value of doing email marketing and doing it thoughtfully and doing it personalization, then this person then ties it back. Well, wait, hold on. That's what Brian said Belkins does. They do it with personalization. They do it thoughtfully. And then those conversations are easier to have. And it kind of helps just nudge the buying process along.
I'll take a side advertising for that. I'll say, look, we looked at a lot of different companies. When we did this, we selected you guys. And now that we've been working with you guys have not just met, but exceeded our expectations. You guys are very good. That's my validation to your comments. We talked earlier about the art and science. You guys, when we first met you guys, we liked the science behind how you guys did it. You guys kind of sold us. What we learned after working with you is you guys actually bring a lot of art to the table too. And you've guided us on things and said, we saw this working. We actually saw this actually working better. And we actually saw this work in another client we want to apply to you guys. And that's where a lot of our momentum came. You guys kind of walk the walk when it comes to the art and the science of selling.
I love that. No, I appreciate that. I can't agree with that more. And thank you for that unsolicited plug on this, because I feel the same way. I feel that's exactly what the team does. They don't operate in a vacuum. They don't keep doing the same thing if it doesn't work. That's one thing that I've noted about my team. And then they're excellent people. I would put my name, my reputation, my paycheck, everything behind our people. But the one thing they won't do is they won't keep hitting their head against the wall. They will iterate quickly. They will think something different. They're speaking with each other about different ways to be successful. And our clients get the benefit of that. That's all because of it's all to keep us at the cutting edge of what we're doing and to be, hey, if something stops working, let's find out as soon as possible that it's gone dead and let's figure out what's going to work next. So no, I appreciate that. Speaking of just kind of in thinking about the evaluation that you guys took, do you guys have competitors in your space? Is it competitive now at all? Is there anybody now that does something similar?
It is. The dance room got really big, really quick. And a lot of it was, again, I think somewhat of a knee-jerk reaction to the pandemic. So I think Gartner and others kind of leading the market, and McKinsey and people talking about the move in B2B going digital. But ask 10 people what digital means in B2B and you'll get 10 different answers, right? But Gartner then kind of solidified it and said there's this concept of a digital sales room out there. And by the way, we spent a lot of time with Gartner too, briefing them on this stuff. So they had a good sense of what works and what didn't. But what ended up happening is a lot of companies then kind of came out with their own version of a digital sales room. Now, again, I track this, we track it as a company. And supposedly we've never lost head to head with any competitor yet. We're just so far out in front in terms of our solution and technology. I always say we're nearly perfect there because I know there's some place that we couldn't have won everything. But again, I think we just come in and our clients tell us that. They just said, you guys just blew us away. You're so much further ahead because we don't treat it as a tool. We treat it as a solution. And the solution includes the experience, how to get customers in, the methodology behind it. We actually came out with this in this last year. We came out with a program, we call it Smart Care. And it really is, it gets us a level of customer intimacy we just never had before. And we didn't know if the customers would spend money on it. They do, and they're happy to buy it. They're happy to renew it. And we do a lot with them. Sometimes sales reps will come to us and say, look, I've been trying to penetrate this client, to expand my base here. What do I do? And we've got experts in the company that can give them a series of recommendations on how to engage with prospects inside the company that they may not have gotten before. And so that kind of program really works with us and our clients seem to love it.
I love that. So that's what I was going to ask. So competitively, your advantages really are the fact that you kind of are the founding fathers of the space and that where you're at now is at such an advanced place compared to the competition landscape that it's more of a no-brainer to work with you than it is we do this better, or it's that we do this and they don't even do this, or they don't even offer this, because you're just at a much greater place. Is that pretty accurate to say?
It is. If they have the existing product, there's some sales training tools that came out with digital sales rooms. And if they're using their sales training tool, they may leverage and backdoor their way in with a digital sales room, which is fine for us because we know they're not going to be successful long-term. And then they're going to come to us eventually. Look, as you know, with competition, the true validation of a real market is when there's multiple companies in there and to some extent, you want to see them all successful at some level too. You want to
Yep,
see the market
absolutely.
grow and develop. And we're seeing that. It's not our competition isn't sitting on their hands. They're doing stuff in the market. They're doing some good stuff, but we are too. And we're drafting behind some of this to develop our own growth here. So
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, you're 100% correct. I believe the competition is a great thing. Good competitors are good for the business, and it pushes us all. We all have to innovate. We have to sharpen our skills when there are good competitors that come into the space. Has your go-to-market changed much from the beginning to now? So I know in the beginning, your go-to-market was focused heavily on the sales aspect and the DSR for sales specifically. Has that messaging stayed the same mostly? Have you seen it shift to look at going after other markets or other industries? What does that look like?
yeah, it has evolved. And where we focused initially just on sales, now we actually do more, believe it or not, in marketing than we do sales now, it's been the shift that's occurred over the last couple of years. We always had sales sponsors initially. Now we're almost, I would say, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4 of our new clients are marketing sponsors. And it's indicative, I think, not just the use cases, because marketing is doing a lot with these types of technologies now, but marketing is beginning to take over is some of that early stage funnel development opportunity stuff. In effect, trying to tee up more qualified opportunities for sales. They just haven't had a way to do it in the past. Spray and pray marketing just doesn't work to develop an opportunity, right? It doesn't. But getting them into an intimate and personalized digital experience they can invite their colleagues into, and they can collaborate and they can work together. Marketing can run all that until they see enough activity in the room that sales says, this looks like it's ready for me. I'm ready to engage myself here. But the beauty is the sales rep's still in the room. So the customer still sees them in there, even though marketing might be turning the dials at that point in time, freeing up sales to close business. It still looks like the sales rep's in charge. And that's the beauty behind all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the conversations now are being had at the marketing level versus the sales level, but it's almost like you have interested parties, the vested interest in both parties, because once they see the capabilities and they start to understand what can be done. I mean, marketing and sales ultimately should really speak to each other. And with most organizations that do well, those two departments should be pretty close cousins, maybe even brother, sister. They should be talking to each other pretty regularly, but that's not always happening if you don't have a marketing person that has got either experience and having worked with sales closely, or maybe they're not behind the relationship that should be between marketing and sales. That's just my opinion. So how do you have that conversation with someone? Because I mean, the value of the digital sales room will serve both folks, both tiers, right? The marketing element and then the sales element. So I think there's probably more value in the adoption of a partnership if both leaders, the CMO and the VP of sales or the head of sales, are behind it. So how do you guys get them in the same room? Because it sounds like now you used to start with the sales leader, but now you're starting with the marketing leader.
Yeah. And we can start either way. It's ultimately where it lands, like who's going to be the ultimate owner of this over time. We do have clients today that this is a sales-centric system. Sales owns it, sales enablement drives it, and that's what happened. And marketing may provide some branding help and support, but mostly on the periphery. And those are okay, but I don't think they're our most successful ones. The most successful ones are the ones that, in many cases, marketing is leading it. So they may be leading it. They lead it from a broader strategy, right? So they're looking at things like, how do I engage the customer throughout their entire journey? Early, middle, late, after the sale, all of that. That's where marketing comes in. They can see all this. Some of this they drive themselves. They may run executive forums, product groups, things like that. Pipeline, building and developing pipeline. Sales does their thing, but marketing can help make sure these rooms are well designed for sales. Sales simply just has to add some content and drive the activity. And also, marketing is doing a lot more work in account management, again, helping organizations to better engage across an enterprise. The role of marketing has expanded quite a bit from our point of view, and we believe, we've seen it, it's now they have enabling technology that allows them to do stuff that they couldn't do before.
Got it. And that makes sense to me too, because really when it comes to new acquisition of customers, sales is pretty much one and done. Once they become a customer, once they become a client, we're focused on acquiring new customers, but marketing's not. Right. You know, marketing, it's just the message might shift a little bit. The message might change a little bit from pre-becoming a client when they're a prospect to post becoming a client, where now they're a client of ours. And so now it's maybe just communicating our messaging and making sure that we are making our message sticky, and also making sure that any new offerings are communicated to them and ways that they can utilize and best utilize our services. So no, that
One
that
of the
makes
beauties of
sense.
this too, Brian, is marketing gets so much insight to customer behavior that they've never seen before. So depending on who the person is, when they are, where they are in their journey, and what information they're consuming, it becomes very evident that a lot of and what you'll end up seeing is 80% of the material marketing makes isn't getting used, or not getting used properly. So don't keep producing the same thing just because your neighbor did it or you think it's going to work. Start looking at what customers are actually consuming. And what we're seeing today is more video content than more traditional flat PDF content. Long documents too just don't get a lot of attention. My God, think of all the work people put into those 15 and 20 and 25 page white paper. They look beautiful. I'm sure there's some great words in there, but nobody's reading them. Don't spend time on it. We're all socially conditioned here to scroll and get little snippets and TikTok versions of information. They got to be thinking that way versus long form content that just is driving people crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, you're really spot on with that, because if it's much longer than a page, you lost me.
Yeah.
Much longer than 2 minutes, I'm gone.
And I better have a nice
so
picture or graph that draws me in too, because if it's all text, I'm done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you raised some capital, gained your first customers, you fleshed out your offering, and your go-to-market has shifted some. Have you guys raised money since the first round, or have you continued to just build the business in terms with that in seed round that you raised?
Yeah, no, we're self-funding ourselves right now. The business is growing and we're self-funding. And we're keeping an eye open to that. So we may look at taking a step back in. A lot of this is the market. So we see the market heating up quite a bit. We're thinking maybe in the next year, we do something a little bit more forward-looking, put a significant investment behind the company, double, triple certain areas that we're not doing as much now, and seeing that go. And a lot of this is just on when we think the market seems to be ready. It's getting closer, but probably not quite there yet.
Got it. Awesome. And what's the in-game plan for you and for Journey DXP? What's the goal? What's the 5-year? What's the 10-year look like? Are you looking to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room and really lead the trend and kind of lead this space that you've created? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, our mission was always that we saw sales struggling, and we know sales has to get to a new place. And when we look at sales, it's not small s, it's big S sales, right? So it's everything we do from a marketing side, a selling side, account management to drive revenue. So our whole mission has always been to be the leader that transforms B2B sales to the new world. Everybody's waiting for it. Everybody wants it. It just hasn't arrived yet for everybody. So we want to be the company that transforms the market. With that, I think we'll reach our financial goals, our targets. We're really focused on something more about change management and bringing this industry to a new place.
I love that. If you could go back to the Bill Butler in the beginning of this, before you had gone through this entire journey, and give him a piece of advice based on what you know now, what would be the main thing that you would try to communicate to him?
I think the thing I would say, be prepared for the zags and zigs in the road. When we think about stuff and growth, we always think about it in linear terms, right? I want to go from here to here to here. I've been part of companies that have gone from a few million to hundreds of millions of dollars over so many years. And it always looks like a straight line when you look at it in retrospect, right? But along the way, you have these ups and downs and ups and downs. And I think with that, as I've learned myself to be more patient, to focus on the things that we value the most. We've always made the decision we want to be a product-centric company first and foremost. We believe the product at the end of the day will win the day. We invest disproportionately for a company our size in product and technology and customer success. But I think also is coming out of the sales world, we have a tendency to be less patient people. And I think if I went back and I had to coach myself a little bit, I'd sometimes be a little more patient with the company, maybe with some of the people, the market, et cetera.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it, Bill. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me. And if you've been listening, time is the one thing that we can't give back. So thanks for spending it here. Thanks again, Bill. Appreciate your time. Hope you have a good day.
Thanks, Brian. You too.